Good morning. I did not expect to make a review video of Piranesi so soon, since I started reading it yesterday afternoon. But it turned out that for me this was an absolutely magnificent page turner, and I finished it all through yesterday over about 12 or 13 hours in a few different sittings, and was done with it at 3 a.m. And then I spent another hour or so thinking about it before I eventually concluded that I would make this video here today. So I'll try to talk about this first spoiler free, and then I will let you know when I get into the spoiler territory, because I do have some thoughts about this book that I thought I wanted to share. It's difficult to talk about it without spoiling much, so but I will try right now. Piranesi is about this character called Piranesi who seems to live in a house. This is a house which seems like a museum. It's ancient halls filled with marble statues. It's 3 stories. It seems almost infinitely vast. At least we find out that it is at least 20 kilometers in length. It's 3 stories. The sort of basement story or lower story is subject to tidal waves and water, and then there's the middle story, and then there's an upper story in some clouds. And Piranesi lives in this world together with one other person that is alive, that he refers to as the other. And we follow his life in this house. But a few different things pretty quickly springs to mind when you read it. And I'll stop that trail of thought, because otherwise we get into spoiler territory. So what this is it's a page turner, and it's a mystery unfolding, which is why I can't really say much about it without spoiling it. And it's a magnificent one at that. It does that job very, very effectively. I read all 250 pages yesterday. This is not normal for me. It was very, very gripping and very engaging, and the characterization of Piranesi is quite tender and engaging. None of the other characters are really fleshed out, but that doesn't really matter too much. As a fantasy mystery unfolding, it's doing a great job. I do think, however, that it is primarily that. It is a little bit of a one-trick pony. There is some symbolism that can be read into it, especially in the later pages, and that's what I'll go into when I go into spoiler territory. But I've seen all kinds of reviews this morning for this book talking about a number of different types of interpretations, and most of them, I don't think they hold water as a literary critique, but it can certainly be read as an allegorical novel that sort of opens up into a number of different possible interpretations, and I'll try to go into some of these. So I liked it very, very, very much for that page turner mystery unfolding character. I didn't love it because ultimately it's not really my style of book. I'm generally looking for something else, but it was a very nice palate cleanser, and I didn't expect it to be this engaging. All right, so if we then go into some spoilers now, so if you don't want that, just stop. I took some notes in the beginning when I read it, and I was paying a lot of careful attention to what Susanna Clarke was writing, but about 80 pages in, I sort of just surrendered to the flow, because it started being very, very page turner, very, very exciting what was going on. And at the same time, I didn't think that all the things that she was maybe alluding to would actually lead anywhere, because it's a short book, and I I sort of felt, okay, I will suspend this attempt to read it in a deeper way and just sort of go along for the ride. And I think that is actually also what was intended by Susanna Clarke. And one example of that is fairly early on, I took a note on page 12. This is where we are just starting to learn about this world. And there is an interesting point where Piranesi breaks the fourth wall and addresses the reader, as referred to as the 16th person. And you, who are you? Who is it that I'm writing for? Are you a traveler who has cheated tides and crossed broken floors and derelict stairs to reach these halls? Or are you perhaps someone who inhabits my own halls long after I'm dead? At least I interpreted this as being Piranesi speaking to the reader, but it doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know if it was actually intended that way. But at this point in time in the novel, when you don't know anything about the people that inhabit the world, and he's sort of recounting how many people are there, and he's counting the dead people, and describing them, the 15th person being the photo-op child and so on, and then he refers to the 16th person as you with a capital Y. So yeah, that was one note on this. What else I wanted to say is that the reason why I don't think, as a literary critique, that all of these interpretations that I've seen people come with actually holds water is that I think Susanna Clarke really wanted to write this as a suspenseful mystery unfolding. And to achieve that, she's taking some shortcuts, meaning that some of the interpretations that you can read into it actually is being contradicted in the text, because otherwise it wouldn't be as effectful. In that regard, it reminds me of Shutter Island. That's a great movie with a very crazy plot twist, which you don't see coming the first time you see it. And the reason for that is that it doesn't fully make sense in the context of what you've seen in the movie up until that point. But that is there for effect, and that's the same way I see this. I do think that you can view it as an allegorical novel, and there are a few different ways you can interpret that. In the beginning, I thought it would go into a sort of religion critique, because I found that the way Piranesi talks about the house, that he is the beloved child of the house, and the house is this benevolent, sort of omnipotent consciousness that bestows favors upon its inhabitants. I sort of found that to be referring to religion, and maybe it would then be a religious critique because of the fact that Piranesi is naive and ignorant and is disregarding the facts that is there. He is describing himself as an observer and a scientist, but there are a lot of inconsistencies where he should really start to notice that something is wrong. He believes the house is the whole world, and even when it's indicated to him that someone has arrived there from somewhere else, the 16th person, he interprets that as being that she has arrived from distant halls. So he does not consider that there is anything else in the world other than this house. This house is the world. But if you look at how he is navigating in this world, he does not have shoes. He has to, fish, and he goes days without eating much. And he has to sort of get all his sustenance and all his resources from within the house himself. But the other person that is in this world, first of all, he only sees him on Tuesdays and Fridays. That other person eats cheese and ham sandwiches. And Piranesi notes at some point that he's really grateful to the other for giving him a cheese and ham sandwich. Now, if there is nothing else than this house in this world, where does this other person get his cheese and ham sandwich from? There's no 7-Eleven here in this house. Okay? Secondly, he doesn't have shoes. He has tattered old clothes. He has, seashells and stuff in his hair. But this other person is always dressed in a neatly pressed suit. where does he get that suit from? Okay, so there are indications and things all throughout that should make Piranesi aware that this other person is actually going somewhere else and then going back into this world when he's meeting him on Tuesdays and Fridays. But Piranesi does not consider that or think about that at all. And initially I thought that was indicative of sort of the, religious mindset of suspended disbelief. But as we then move throughout the novel, it takes on I think different character. And ultimately, I think the lens you can view this from is a psychological one. And I think that the one that makes the most sense is to consider how this is an allegorical novel of psychological abuse and gaslighting that you see in some cults, and that would then also explain the somewhat allusions to religious practices. And it makes sense in the context of this leader Lawrence Arne Sales, which is a fictional character. He is sort of an Aleister Crowley type of occultist, who is described as having these, followers, and that he at some point is described how he forces one of his followers to, for no apparent reason, cut contact with her parents in order for her to be, fully dedicated to serving him in his practice as an occultist. And that is typical cult behavior. So, and furthermore, as you discover, or as you along with Piranesi discovers that he is actually a person called Matthew, and that sort of other consciousness, that other personality within him is awoken, you get some quite tender and lovely descriptions where he talks about himself as not Matthew anymore. Matthew is still within him, but he is sleeping. And I found all of that to be possible to interpret as, a victim of a cult that's been brainwashed and eventually, completely subverted his own independent personality, and has sort of taken on this cultish phenomenon as his worldview and belief. Now, on the surface, he's being rescued from this world by a policewoman who is also able to enter into this world, which indicates that this world is actually something that exists, and that's where it is a fantasy. But I think it works better if you think of it as a magical realism, where this policewoman is actually not transcending into a different world, but she is gaining access to that part of Matthew's personality, and she's able to reach him and talk with him and get him to remember his past personality and his past life in order to bring him out of this state of mental breakdown that he is in. And all of that is interesting, but I think the main driving force in the novel is the mystery, and the mystery unfolding, and the page-turner quality to that. I think that is done very well. There are some points where the reader is catching up much faster than Piranesi is, that something is wrong. As I just talked about, Piranesi doesn't really pick up on all the indications that something is not what it seems here. So he is an unreliable narrator, but an unconsciously unreliable narrator, and that works really well, with the exception of at some point in the middle of the novel, I felt that, okay, come on, I mean, you're sort of dim-witted now, okay? I wanted him to catch up a bit faster. But as you then get to the end and you more get this discovery of him having a submerged personality, potentially a personality disorder, or if you view it to this submersion of him being in a cult, then it makes sense that he is sort of willfully blind to the things that would otherwise indicate that his worldview is not correct. yeah. So I find it hard to quantitatively evaluate this book, like, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, which also, I guess, doesn't really matter. As a mystery unfolding, it's a great novel. I think that has been the priority. That is the main driving force here. And then there is some symbolism that you can read into it. I'm really glad I read it. I don't think I will ever read it again, because without that mystery, I don't really think it is that effective. If Susanna Clarke really wanted to write a novel about psychological abuse as the main sort of topic in the novel, she could have done it in many, many different ways. That would have been a lot more effective for conveying that side of the story. But yeah, so I liked it a lot. Didn't love it as much as some people do. But that is primarily for the reasons that is just not ultimately my type of book that I'm mostly looking for. Okay, so today is my last day before going back to work, so I'll probably not read as 250 pages every day. But yeah, happy reading.